Welcome back to the College Financial Health Show with Matt Hendricks and Gary Stocker, where each and every Tuesday we look at the financial health and viability of private colleges across the country. And we have a couple colleges we're looking at today. Dr. Matt Hendricks, what do you have for us?
Yeah, we're going to do a joint presentation of two schools in Pennsylvania. They're 20 miles apart. The schools are DeSales and what was the other? Lafayette. So I'm bringing up the advanced compass here, and I'm going to do them at the same time. So I'll pull up DeSales on the top. And by the way, remember the capability here. You can put in a bunch of different schools. Ideally, this is set up to, put 10 or 15 or even more of your peer schools in here and kind of see where you land relative to the peer set. But since I just have two schools, one for each line, we'll just need to keep straight which is which. The green line is going to be Lafayette, all right, and blue is DeSales, all right. And I'm going to start with net income margin, which is where we always start. This is like the profit margin at the school. Zoom in a little bit. And you can see very, very different stories for these two schools. Again, 20 miles apart. Lafayette doing quite well. But since COVID, things have sort of gone off the rails here financially for DeSales. We've got a 4% loss, 12 and 12. Those are fairly large. Again, how do I know they're large? Well, clearly they're outside of the middle 50th percentile, right? They're below the 25th percentile. So probably better than 80 or 90% of schools are doing better than DeSales on net income margin. All right. Normal net income margin, ideal net income margin is like plus 1%. Normal at this moment is slightly negative, which is not good. You don't want to be normal and higher ed at the moment, right? Median. You want to do much better than the median. For that forever, before higher ed really had all the structural problems that it's facing right now, it was always plus 1%. All right.
Yeah.
Part of this negative though here could be just spending down some of the massive COVID relief funds that were divvied out. See this huge plus 5% for the median, and that still hasn't really been gobbled up with these negatives back here. So it could be that still. All right. So what's the takeaway from this? It looks like Lafayette's doing fine financially, not so fine for DeSales. Actually, that's pretty alarming to have 3 years in a row and such sizable net income loss. We'll double check net cash from operations. That should always be positive because again, there's some expenses that are not cash, right? So really cash should be better. Net cash margin should be better on average. Depending on the way that you do the accounting though, it looks like the way Lafayette's doing the accounting is they're pulling out their endowment draws and they're still right at zero. That's fine. Yeah. And you can see DeSales has the proper account, the accounting that I prefer, which is keeping the endowment draw in. So they do a little bit better on net cash, but still negative, right? Negative net cash from operating activities is very bad. Again, assuming you're not putting in your endowment draws, which I did verify for DeSales. So it means basically to cover your payroll and everything, your cash outflow, you have to either sell assets or draw down your cash reserves. And in their case, it looked like they were doing massive drawdowns on their cash. I'll just show you cash and equivalents here. Yeah. So very different. These schools are relatively similar size, right? So maybe it's not. I wonder if their endowments are quite different, but just for comparison here, Lafayette has 64 million in cash at the end of 2024, and DeSales has 4.7 million in cash, and you can see it's decreasing, and that's part of this drawdown that I'm talking about. Yeah. That's not ideal, but that's a lot of cash on hand too. But relative to their revenues, yeah, it's still very high.
Same thing, yeah.
Okay, so some stress here. Evidence of financial stress for sure on the case of DeSales, and let's take a look at CapEx. Remember, CapEx is something that's a good indicator. Usually, it's a low priority thing to sort of fix a roof or a parking lot if finances are not there. But both of these schools look pretty good on CapEx, so I'm not worried about this. Again, ideally, you're right at 1 or above every year. Lafayette is, of course. DeSales not quite at that level, but they had some big years back here, so I'm not
We've
worried.
seen worse.
Much worse. All right, let's take a look at unrestricted net assets. That's kind of like the best, it's really, in my opinion, the best gauge at how big the runway is for these schools. And you can see Lafayette has almost 500 million in unrestricted net assets. And DeSales, that's also quite good, 126 million. It's great. I'm not worried about either of these schools closing anytime soon, but I am worried about this trend for DeSales, right? You don't want your unrestricted net assets to be declining, especially not at this fast rate, which is again a product of their budget deficits. It looks like a normal unrestricted net asset growth, the median school is growing, right? And DeSales is not. All right, see, since 2021, they're down quite a bit, and Lafayette's up quite a bit. So this runway is still pretty big, but it's getting smaller and smaller the longer they let these deficits go. So it needs to be addressed. All right, I think that's it. So clearly, Lafayette looks great financially. DeSales not so great, but certainly not at any risk of closing anytime soon. But they should deal with this immediately, in my opinion. All right, so let's take a look at revenue and expenses, starting with operating revenues. So Lafayette's revenue is 200, like more than double what DeSales is. Lafayette is that's great, 212 million in revenue versus 81 million in revenue. But I want to focus mostly on changes on the same scale. So Lafayette, even though their revenue is really high, it's also grown faster than DeSales has. They're up 33% versus DeSales normal revenue growth of 17%. That's actually quite good. It's normal. So right out of the gate, I can tell, you can probably guess what's going to be the issue here, right? If your revenue growth is
Expenses,
normal and you're running deficits, you probably have expense growth that is not normal. So that's what I'm going to switch into right now. Just remember these numbers, 33 and 17 for operating growth, revenue growth. And let's compare to expenses. Yeah, so both of them have the expenses growing at the same rate, all right, which is fine for Lafayette, right? They're up 31%. Remember, the revenue's up 33%, so that's perfect. But it's not perfect for DeSales because remember, their revenue is up 17%, but their expenses are up 30%. So just like we suspected, they're going to have faster than normal expense growth and far faster than normal expense growth for the subset of schools that have 17% growth, right? In that range.
Yeah.
It's not normal to grow your expenses far faster than
we see that, Matt. We see that so often with these colleges, just an inability to manage their expenses in relationship to their revenue.
Yeah. And you can see, I mean, it's fine if it happens once, 1 year, and then you fix it, right? That's sort of a normal thing to see. But to let it go for several years is not. Sort of indicates a breakdown in budgeting, oversight, or both. The board needs to get involved. If they don't know about this, they need to get involved. Watch the show. I'm going to give you some advice right now on how they might fix this on the expense side. So I'm going to focus in on the expenses, but I will show the revenues here. Net tuition revenue and enrollments for these two schools. So we have, let's look at change in net tuition revenue. Both of them doing great on revenue side. I mean, obviously Lafayette doing better. That's nearly a 75th percentile for net tuition revenue growth, up 30%, right? So like, what enrollment cliff is what they're saying.
Right. That's funny.
Honestly, I think, actually, we'll take a look. It might not have to do with the enrollment. And same for DeSales. Their 16% net tuition revenue growth is not bad. It's much better than average. I would definitely like that if that were my school. And the prices are very different. And this is one of the key things. If you're going to survive this sort of enrollment cliff, it's all going to be about price and market share, right? And Lafayette's in a great spot here. Their students pay a ton on average, 36K versus 17K, which is actually slightly lower than what kids used to pay. Actually, I just said that wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Same. A little bit higher.
A little bit higher, yeah.
But in real terms, it's probably lower.
It is, yeah.
But it's still not way out of the ordinary, right? They're just sort of following along with the median school in the
Yeah.
country in terms of net tuition revenue per student. Look at enrollment really quick. Students. All right. So this gets all the attention, right? But both of these schools, nothing about. So we have 7% enrollment growth at Lafayette, yet their revenues are exploding, right? So it has not much to do with the enrollment. And really the same at DeSales, right? Their enrollment's up 10%. That's in the 75th percentile nearly relative to 2016. Although I will admit this,
Yeah, look at
great
2020.
since
Yeah.
2020, but still you can deal with that, right? You're up 10% on FTE enrollment since 2016, which is why your net tuition revenue is higher, right? So again, just the expenses outpace these revenue growth for DeSales. All right, let's take a look at the expense side then, because that's where I think there's going to be most of the bang for the buck for both. Well, actually, not both, just for DeSales. Lafayette looks fine, but we'll see them along the way. Let's take a look at staffing first. It's the biggest item. I think I have it in here under employees.
Employees. Yeah.
All right. So first, I'll look at it relative to FTE. DeSales has a bigger staff per FTE than Lafayette is green versus DeSales. It's hard to say whether it's bad or good. Obviously, DeSales has more money.
They can afford it.
Lafayette has more money per student. Their students are paying $36K, right? You can afford to have a lot of staff per student when that's the case. Versus 17 here. Relative to their revenues, this shows a little bit cleaner view that there could be a problem at DeSales. So relative to the revenue, this is really going to impact the bottom line. How many staff do you have relative to your actual operating revenue? And you can see DeSales is near the 75th percentile on that metric. Again,
so a lower number is a better number here.
Yes. So one way to think about this, well, this is number of staff per 1 million of revenue. And this is not ideal, right? DeSales, they're right in. So you can see some of the schools that closed, they're in this territory where they're staffing relative to their overall revenue is just quite a burden, right? Whereas DeSales not, right? Probably. Well, this is the actual staff count. So we'll look at payroll, get a better sense of that. Looking at salaries and wages, other means just non-officer. But again, relative to revenue, yeah, this doesn't look right.
Yeah.
And this is where they're running deficits here, right? 23 and 24. We don't have 24 big deficits in 23 and 24. So total payroll. So this is the way to interpret this. About 4.5% of their operating revenue is going to salaries and wages for non-admin, right? So this is not including directors.
Faculty staff mostly.
Faculty staff, yeah, not your top end staff. So that looks inflated. Whereas at Lafayette, it's quite low still. Let's take a look at the director's compensation.
We're always entertained with this one.
Yeah. So it's actually flipped here. So interesting stories emerging at DeSales. They've got payroll costs appear to be high, but it's mostly non-top admin, right? Whereas we've seen it reversed at a lot of schools.
Yeah.
So this is one interesting things about looking at data. You can find weird patterns. And if I remember right, there's another pattern here with number of employees over 100K. Yeah, look at this. So what's sort of emerging here? So what this says at its face is that they have a lot of staff at DeSales for their revenue, a lot of staff making over $100,000. And it's increased a lot dramatically since 2020, which is odd, right? That's not normal. All right, don't tell me this has to do with inflation or anything like that. It doesn't. So this is very odd. They need to look at, okay, again, the payroll number is high overall. It's not the directors. So it's like your maybe mid-level management or faculty that make over 100K that seems to have grown quite a bit and maybe causing stress in the budget. Look really closely at those folks. If you do a strategic compass engagement, we can find these folks relatively easily by occupation level, and then do a deeper dive and find by occupation level and department exactly where these folks are and what might be causing problems on the payroll side.
Yeah, I was showing the strategic compass to a CFO last night, and he was stunned at the data that came out of that in terms of employees.
Yeah, I know people ask me all the time, where's this data come from? Where do you get this? So yeah, people just don't seem to know that this capability is out there. We'll keep it secret, right,
That's
Gary?
right. We won't tell anybody.
No, yeah, it's very powerful. Okay, so staffing is clearly an issue at DeSales. They need to look at, particularly these folks over
Yeah.
100K, not considered directors. All right, let's look at contractors. That tends to be another pain point. Both of them look fine, a bit high at DeSales, but that looks okay to me as far as number of contractors. And yeah, I think I'll whip into then some of the big items here, like advertising. Okay, here's another one that needs to be looked at immediately.
Interesting.
So DeSales is paying a lot for marketing. Look at Lafayette, like virtually nothing out of their budget is going to opt to advertising, and the opposite at DeSales. Okay. So this needs to be looked at.
I'm guessing Lafayette's a really selective college. I bet that shows up in the
Yeah,
admission.
and they probably, yeah, like they might have a much stronger brand. I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
that the students are paying double to go there, triple.
And they don't
But
need to be convinced to go there.
yeah, it doesn't mean that the sales needs to be doing this, right? And they have some natural experiments here. Look at 2019. Look at this drop here and then this rise here. Did it matter? Did this freshman classes change at all here? So you've got lots of natural movement here. Double check these. It could be that this advertising is not working at all, in which case they can probably cut it back down to normal, and that's $2 million. All right, so that would close their net cash deficit, right? So that's one thing. IT spend looks like there may have also been an issue with IT at DeSales that they recently corrected, almost corrected. This is again really high IT spend. But I did notice that they dropped the contractor that was in IT, so that's probably what happened here. They probably still have some excessive IT spend that they need to get off their books.
Are you going to show us that in the vendor table?
Yeah, well, okay, DeSales looks fine on insurance, but if I were at Lafayette, I would look at the insurance policies. This is not normal. They used to be normal, now they're not. There could be $1 million or so there. Let me see. They're spending $3 million on insurance. They used to spend 1.3, so it's like it's doubled. It's doubled in just a few years. That's not normal. I would double check this. Oh, and that brings me back to another issue with health insurance benefits potentially, or not just health insurance, but just employee benefits. Actually, this is just health insurance. Yeah, okay. So one of the problems with the payroll at DeSales appears to be the benefits package. This could be health insurance. Again, one thing I like to dig into when I'm working with clients, figure out what's causing this, but this is a really high benefit spend. And I think in this case, I have to double check this. This might not include the employee retirement contribution. This is like health, dental, vision, life, that kind of stuff. And this is really high. All right, so look at that. Okay, IT, insurance. Okay, most of this, let's see, fees for services. Yeah, they look good. There are some issues though with some of these contracts, and I will show you DeSales. I'll show you both of them. Oh, I forgot to mention one. Notice one of the contracts that we usually see here is missing. So DeSales, well, I'll just say what we can see right now, but there's also interesting what we can't see. So we have a landscaping contract that appears high, quite high for their revenue and high for their size. That needs to be looked at. It's $1 million for landscaping. And that's not even janitorial included. Yeah. So both of these combined are probably very high for sort of maintenance, general maintenance contracts. again, I'm just kind of guessing, but the cost of being wrong is very, very low. Just go out and
Yeah.
get some bids, right? It
Yeah.
costs
Right.
nothing. Go get some bids. You might be pleasantly surprised to find that you'll get a bid far less than $1 million to do landscaping. And same with janitorial, less than 800K. Or even change it up, right? Say, hey, what can we do with the current vendor to bring this down a couple 100K? We mow every other week rather than every week, stuff like that, right? You have a budget deficit, so let's think about it in that context.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the advertising, right? $1.7 million for this advertising. Is this working or is it not? Again, get more bids, talk to other vendors. This is a very competitive space. Don't get complacent here. And it looks like this is their first year with MediaWorks. Yeah, look at this very closely. That does not look right, but I could be wrong. Again, the cost of being wrong is very low here. Just go get some other estimates, talk to more vendors, see what they can offer, or think about not doing it at all, right? What would be, you can tease that out of the data, right? When you reduce the spend, what's likely to happen? All right, one of the things that's not showing up here is very important. They don't have a food service vendor, right? There's no way their food service vendor with 3,000 students is going to be under 800K. So they probably have no food service vendor, which means in-house food service.
Huh.
That's another important question. Almost all schools now are outsourcing food service. The reason for that probably is that it's cheaper and more efficient and better than doing it in-house. So double check that, compare the cost of, so you're looking at $1,600 per student generally for food service. Compare that to what your current food service cost is if it's in-house.
Would that show up in the strategic compass for DeSales?
Yeah, I have the exact projection based on their peers, what their food service contract would look like. And yeah, it's really, again, another easy thing to do. Go check, get some bids, compare that to what the current cost is for food service, which I can't see, but the CFO certainly can. What's it costing to do all this stuff in-house? And they can take that off the CFO's plate. You can probably eliminate a lot of sort of admin jobs, service jobs. Those get outsourced to the vendor. I know it's controversial, but it does tend to save schools a bunch of money and potentially also at the same time improve the food service on campus.
You can envision a scenario there where some folks have been full-time employees in food service for decades and would be culturally challenging and maybe even politically challenging to change that.
Yes, yes. But again, that's why the strategic compass is so, so important. And I urge my clients to show it to their staff, show it to their faculty, right? It's much easier to go up to your staff and say, hey, we've got this deficit. You can see the deficit right here. This is how much we spend on food service. This is what all of our peers are spending.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense for us to do this, right? I'm sorry that you don't like it, but it's my job to make sure the school is running as efficiently as possible. And our mission is not necessarily to provide the best dining services, but to provide the best education we possibly can, which, you can go on, but, this is the kind of thing you got to make difficult decisions. And this is honestly why I think a lot of schools struggle. They just don't want to approach these difficult decisions and make them. You just have to. Okay, Bon Appetit. So Lafayette's food service contract looks high. All right. So, and no shock, Bon Appetit is one of the most expensive food service vendors. So you kind of got the other extreme here. If a school's struggling financially, I wouldn't recommend that they bring this one in, but yeah, Bon Appetit is going to be high-end food and it's going to be expensive. Look at what they spend $4,500 per student on dining. That's a lot, right?
Out of $37,000 or something for tuition.
It has a almost $13 million contract. So if they want to save money, again, they can do it here, get other bids, with some of the other vendors. But don't look at this if you're DeSales saying, hey, we're gonna, you don't have to go with this vendor. There's other vendors. And again, you're looking for about like $1,500-$1,600 per student, not $4,500. So there's a wide range here in what you get. All right, I'll leave it at that, Gary, and pass it back to you.
Interesting. So we had you mentioned at the start, Matt, that these two colleges are 20 miles apart.
Yep.
Um, and clearly one is doing quite well, Lafayette, and one is doing less well. We're in an era where mergers are going to become increasingly important. Do you see that as a potential here?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Especially in this Pennsylvania area where there's a lot of schools. They're also facing demographic challenges. This whole area is like a hotbed for a lot of the schools we've covered is right around in this
Yeah,
region.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, the story, obviously you've got some doing well, some not so well, some with long runways, others with no runway at all. I mean, we looked at Albright has negative unrestricted net assets, right?
Yeah.
They're right in this region as well. I think they're probably another 50 miles away or so from this. Yeah, if I were working at Lafayette, I'd be looking at gobbling some of these up, to be honest, if that
Yeah.
was part of what the board wanted to do. Yeah.
And I still believe economics will drive that at some point. Of course, it's just tough to tell the time frame on that. The 2025 College Viability App, just a couple of fields, Matt, a couple of reports I want to show. Four-year graduation rate is where we're going to start. And again, we see two colleges doing pretty gosh darn well. Lafayette doing very, very well, 85%, over 80%, well over 80% over the last 8 years. DeSales not as good, but as you know, Matt, 50% is the threshold, and they're well above that. So to their credit, they're doing a fine job graduating students. But like we see too many times, colleges graduating students, Matt, still have significant financial challenges, and that's what's disturbing. I can understand that for colleges that can't graduate anybody, but for colleges doing a decent, if not exceptional job of graduating students, it's kind of sad to see them with challenging financials as well. I want to take a look then at the unfunded institutional grants. And of course, you and I know that as most merit aid, most scholarships. And in both cases, both these colleges, you can see that from 2016 to 2023, they've invested quite a bit in discounts. And over the last 8 years, DeSales is over 17 million. Tough to say they could afford that. Lafayette is over 20 million over 8 years. It's easier to say that that's doable for them. But again, that intense pressure, Matt, that we see on tuition prices is present both at financially strong colleges like Lafayette and less so for colleges like DeSales University.
Mhm.
That's that at some point, Lafayette's not an issue. They're going to be fine for forever. Colleges like DeSales, there's the one that needs to manage that. And remember the tuition differences? DeSales was what, Matt, 17,000, give or take per student?
Like that, 17 versus
Yeah.
30.
And Lafayette was 37,000, yet they're still giving away a lot of that. It's not money. They're giving away discounts. They're giving away discounts to their students. And I want to take a look at, and this is what's reflected in your data. And this kind of confirms what Matt shared with you a few minutes ago. Both colleges have been able to grow enrollment. Now, Matt, we've done over 130 colleges over the last year or so, and a small percentage, maybe 30%, show positive tuition growth. Most colleges, that difference column on the far right-hand side would be a negative number. So again, financially doing okay on the tuition and fees. As we saw with DeSales, they have significant, and Matt identified those, significant expense management issues, and they've been there for a long time. So if you're from DeSales University and you're watching this and you want some guidance, reach out to me. I'll have my contact information in the show notes and we'll set up a private demo, not just of the advanced compass that Matt showed you earlier, but the strategic compass that we have both referenced a couple of times. It's a tool that a college like DeSales University could make great value on. Now, we just talked mergers a moment ago. If you're at Lafayette College, and you're pondering growing your business by acquiring or merging with other colleges, both the Advanced Compass and the Strategic Compass are tools you can use to identify potentially strong or, more importantly, potentially weak colleges with which to approach. So again, reach out. I'll have my contact information in the show notes. And then finally, Matt, we'll close each show with the Majors Completion app. And this, to the best of our knowledge, Dr. Hendricks, is a unique tool out there, and it lets colleges compare both the internal and external market share for the programs they offer. Now we have 64 majors, not every major God created is on here. And we have internal market share for Lafayette College. And you can see they have some strong programs, right? and none are particularly dominant. Economics, interestingly, maybe Dr. Hendricks, you could go and teach economics at Lafayette someday. Strong, one of the stronger ones I've seen, unlike DeSales, which has none. But again, like we see everywhere, Matt, I can't think of exceptions to this. There are some majors, even at a financially healthy college, academically strong college like Lafayette, they have to be asking themselves the question, why are they in the geological and earth sciences business? Why are they in the chemistry business? I understand each of those has prerequisites for other majors, those kind of things. But there are 28 majors between the two colleges, and they're 20 miles apart. The opportunity for consolidation exists. And we can do the same thing for DeSales. Interestingly, Matt, they offer a lot more courses, a lot more majors than the more financially successful Lafayette College. And we talked in the last couple of weeks that Indiana and now Texas have thresholds for majors per student, for majors graduating. And it's 15 over 3 years in Indiana, and it's 25 over 5 years in Texas. So now we have a number. So we can look at 15 and look at the number of majors that DeSales offers below that 15 number, really Homeland Security all the way up. Those are majors. If they were public college in Indiana, they'd be asked, Matt, to close those. They would be commanded to close those. So that's the internal market share. When we look at external market share, what I have here, and Matt, you and I talked about this before we started the show today, one major, that major is psychology. In Pennsylvania, Dr. Hendricks, there are 95, count them, don't count them, takes too long, 95 colleges that offer psychology. And look at the external market share. This is the external market share. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. 95. And there are a few that do well, but look at the highest one. Penn State is at 12% of the market, Temple at 10% of the market, and Westchester University at 7% of the market. The rest are all bit players. But interestingly, I think almost every one of those players, not all of them, have double-digit psychology majors. You know, it's and I'm going to make the argument, Matt, that there are more psychology majors offered in Pennsylvania than there are pizza joints. And maybe there's some opportunity to think about these colleges consolidating those majors and engaging in some kind of revenue sharing to enhance both their expense component and their net revenue component from those majors as well. So, Matt, as we always wrap up the show, and for those watching for the first time, you'll hear it for the first time. For those who've been with us quite a while, it's the comparisons, Matt, that matter. And Matt, you referenced this a couple times during the early part of the show. Don't rely on your own internal data. And Matt, you've shared before, a 2% increase from year to year, looking at your own data, can be good or it can be awful. You don't know that unless you compare yourself to others. And so, Matt, I'll let you wrap up before I close off the show. What kind of comments do you have for both Lafayette and DeSales?
Well, I hope they saw, if they watch the show, they see, like we do, every client I've ever worked with that finds something surprising in the data that they're like, wow, I didn't know that, or wow, I hadn't even thought about, looking at food service, or, those are the kinds of things that are massive, right? Just some breakthrough like that, just understanding, the staffing distribution might look odd, right? And we can dig far, far deeper into that with a strategic compass. But yeah, even for schools that are doing well, like Lafayette, did they know their food service contract is insanely expensive, right? Like, I don't, that's pretty strong language, but I've seen worse, but, it's expensive. Do they know that they have neighbors around them that are struggling, that they might, benefit mutually with that new, merger candidate potentially? But there's a lot of schools around Lafayette that would probably like a lifeline from them. And that's one of the things I've been doing with the clients lately too, is finding other targets to sort of approach and say, hey, like, we can probably both benefit from a merger, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of opportunities to learn from this data.
Well, again, fascinating show today because it showed two colleges, really not extremes, but two colleges going in different directions. One doing well, Lafayette, the other one less so. So, again, thanks for making time to watch the show. For Dr. Matt Hendricks, I'm Gary Stocker. We'll look forward to doing another show next week, and we'll look at two more colleges then. We'll talk soon.